Am I the only one who thinks Supergirl is kind of good? Hey, I'm just as surprised as you are, okay? Because let me paint a little picture for you. So in the lead up to this movie, I really had no excitement when the trailers were coming out. I didn't really find anything to be all that exciting about them. It just kind of looked like a very generic superhero movie, maybe with a little Guardians of the Galaxy flavor, but there was nothing about the story, about this character, from the trailers that really hooked me. And even as far as the marketing as a whole, it didn't really scream confidence to me. It felt like DC wasn't pushing as hard to really market this film in the way that I remember them doing for Superman, when it felt like they were really confident in the film that they had. And then to make matters worse, the first reviews for this film started coming out, and I'm not sure what the Rotten Tomatoes score is now, but it debuted as actually rotten on the tomato meter. So, going into this film, I really wasn't expecting much. And now, having seen it, I gotta say, pleasantly surprised. When it comes to Supergirl, this film really is a tale of two halves for me. Because when it comes to the first half, I feel like this movie is exactly what everyone else is saying it is, and what I expected it to be going in. Just kind of a fairly standard run-of-the-mill superhero flick. Nothing too horrendous, but maybe just a little bit forgettable. Because when it comes to that first half, it has a little bit of a... and this is going to make it sound really bad, but it has a bit of that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania feel to it, where, while not being nearly as bad as that movie, Supergirl follows a similar structure of basically just being a sequence of very random, sort of pointless fight scenes with not that much purpose behind a lot of them. Where the movie starts off and we basically just get into this pattern where it's Supergirl pulling up to a certain location, a fight breaks out, then she moves off to a different location, a fight breaks out, and then she goes to another location, and another fight breaks out. And it felt a lot like we're just doing fight scenes for the sake of doing fight scenes. There's no real purpose, there's not really a strong through line that's sort of keeping the plot moving forward. No, it's kind of just, oh look, our character's on a bus, and a random fight's gonna break out with aliens, and now they're in a dive bar, and a random fight's gonna break out with aliens. That type of thing. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that through the first half, the movie doesn't really get you invested in either of our characters' missions. So when it comes to Ruthie, her inciting incident is that her entire family gets killed by the main villain of this movie, Cream or whatever, and then she's out seeking revenge, and that's why she wants to go after him. For Kara, it's that her dog gets shot by Mr. Cream, and she needs to go after him to go and get the antidote. On paper, both seem like valid things that we as an audience can get behind, except the movie doesn't really do anything to make you actually care about either of these incidents. When it comes to Ruthie, yes, we see her family get killed off, but like, her family is on screen for 30 seconds in this movie. They're only there so that we can see them get killed off. We have no emotional attachment to any of these people. I mean, I don't think her brother even has like a single line in this movie. I mean, I guess the line is, ugh, and then he dies. And so the scene just feels like a plot device, something to show you so that you can understand why this little girl is off on this mission. And even in terms of the scene itself, it's not the most heartbreaking. Like, there isn't this huge scene where Ruthie breaks down and cries and it's so emotional. No, it's just kind of going, look, they're dead, and now she's going off to go and find someone to help her. So consciously, as an audience member, you understand why she's doing it, but do you actually feel anything? No, not really. And then when it comes to Kara, her dog gets shot. You know, it's the John Wick method. This should be a foolproof way to get the audience to care. But at this point, we have not really seen much of her relationship with Krypto. So again, it also just kind of feels like a device where we know she needs to go save him, but we don't feel a whole lot of that emotion here because we don't fully understand just how much they mean to each other. And it's a shame because the movie does eventually get there. Like I said, this is a movie that is a tale of two halves. And once we get to the second half, specifically from the point where we start exploring Kara's backstory, in my opinion, the movie just went up to another gear and it never came down. Like, as soon as we started exploring her backstory, I thought, okay, this is great, but maybe only this will be great. And this sort of higher level of the movie, they're not going to be able to sustain this to the end. But they were. Like, I kept waiting for the drop-off, and it just never happened. As soon as we crossed the halfway point of this movie, everything else from that point forward really just felt like the movie was firing on all cylinders. And the quality going up was almost a little bit jarring, where I was like, wait a minute. Wait a damn minute. is this movie actually getting good right now? Because once we get to see the backstory of Kara and how she grew up in Argo City, this like remaining piece of Krypton, it allows us to understand her character and why she is the way she is a lot better. It allows us to feel much more emotionally connected to her, and it also gets us to even understand her feelings towards Krypto, because Krypto is basically her last piece of home that she still has with her. And also, tonally, here the movie starts to get a lot more serious and a lot darker, and as someone who tends to prefer my comic book movies a little bit more on that serious side, this is just something that worked for me. And I should mention, I also felt like this more dramatic material even allowed for Millie Alcock's great acting chops to shine a little bit more. So I do wonder if this film would have worked better overall if maybe we had shifted some of this backstory stuff with Kara to the beginning of the film instead of having it in the middle. Because like I said, the movie struggles, at least for me personally, to really make you care about what's going on in the first half. And I think if maybe we had gotten some of that backstory, some of that context for who Kara is and why she operates the way she does, it could have given the film an engine right from the get-go that would have made us as the audience a lot more invested. I also felt like the relationship between Ruthie and Kara got a lot better in the second half, where as Ruthie is getting closer and closer to achieving her goal of this revenge mission, her dynamic with Kara also gets more interesting, because they start to have this real tension about whether the path that Ruthie is on is the right one for her, why she should or shouldn't go down that path, and just the bond between those two characters by this point in the film starts to become something that I'm much more invested in, because they're now opening up to each other, and so that sort of friendship between the two of them really started to work the deeper we got into the film. And I should say, towards the end of the film, that scene where Kara convinces Ruthie not to kill Mr. Cream in some sort of effort to preserve her innocence and not be haunted by that for the rest of her life, immediately followed by Kara turning around and killing Cream herself. I just thought that was such an interesting moment to sort of explore who Kara is as a character, but also this dynamic of Kara wanting to protect someone else from essentially turning into her and going down the same path that she's gone down, while also Kara herself not really getting off that path. I just thought all of that really worked and was such a cool climax to the dynamic between Kara and Ruthie that had been going on throughout this entire film. And even some of the goals and motivations that our characters have got a lot better in the second half, because instead of it just being, oh, we gotta go catch this generic villain, bad guy, Cream, who, I should add, yes, he is generic villain bad guy, but he's also not like a huge part of this film, so that wasn't something that bothered me all that much. But like I was saying, instead of it being just, oh, we gotta go catch this guy, the movie also starts to become more about Kara and Ruthie having to free all these little girls that are being taken to essentially be shipped off as brides. And inherently, I just thought that was something that on a story level, I cared way more about than a lot of what was driving the plot forward in the first half. Now, the man himself, Clark Kent, is also in this movie, and he's not in it for a huge amount, but when he is there, I found him to be charming as hell. Like, honestly, David Cornsweet as Superman. Now, I will admit, it's been a little while since I've watched Superman. I mean, I guess since I saw it in theaters. But I felt like he was even more charming and likable in this movie than I remember him being in his own film. And perhaps some of that is just because he's playing against Kara the whole time, where he is so different to her, and this sort of Boy Scout optimism shines even brighter in the face of a character like Supergirl. But yeah, loved him in this. Also, Jason Momoa was in here as Lobo, which was pretty cool, I guess. Now, he's mainly just in here to throw down, but like, I can't say he was honestly like a huge standout of the movie for me. Now, on the more technical side, this movie looks really good. And it's one of the more interesting things about the discourse around this film, because I've heard some people online say that they thought this film looked bad, which, look, movies are subjective, but usually things like visuals is something that we can all be a little bit more objectively agreeing upon. But man, listening to some people talk about this movie, it feels like I watched a different film, because I thought this movie looked great. Now, I'm not going to pretend that there isn't any moments where you can tell, hey, there's a bit of green screen, or that there's no moments where you can see the CGI, like when Kara's moving super fast and throwing punches. Yes, that is there. But man, a lot of the shots, especially these wide sweeping landscape shots where we're outside on these different planets, I thought they looked really good. And most of all, they looked believable. Like, I did not feel like I was looking at a volume or something filmed in the studio. Like, a lot of these shots, especially when we're outside, really felt like the actors had actually filmed these things on location. And again, not to keep harping on this, but this is something that sticks out more in the second half of the film than the first. Because in the first half of the film, so much of it is spent like in these indoor locations where we're in dive bars or on a bus. Whereas the second half of the film, we get a lot more outdoorsy nature shots. And so those visuals were able to really shine through in the latter half of this movie. The action, I also thought was incredible here. Specifically, Craig Gillespie seems to really like doing this thing with the camera where as the fight scene is going down, he's spinning around a character in a circle. And I thought that made the action scenes look great. You could actually see everything that was going on, which I always appreciate, and it just gave a nice movement and energy to all of the action. And to stay with the technicals here, the score I thought was also a real standout at times in this movie. Specifically, the Supergirl theme I thought was tremendous. The score that plays throughout the entire sort of backstory sequence on Krypton and Argo City was also beautiful to listen to. And I'm not gonna lie, I was listening to that Supergirl theme on the drive back from the theater. It's kind of peak. I also thought what they were doing with the different suns in this movie was really cool. I don't know if this is something from the comics that's very commonplace, but the idea of a red sun where she basically becomes like a normal human, the yellow sun where she's Supergirl and overpowered, and then the green sun, which is like kryptonite poisoning to her. I don't know, I just thought that was really cool. And also, I liked some of the uses of Kara's powers in this movie. Specifically, I loved seeing her X-ray powers because as someone who's watching Smallville right now, a series that loves to show you Superman's X-ray powers like every goddamn episode, I got a nice little kick out of seeing that here. So overall, guys, Supergirl is definitely a movie that was a pleasant surprise. The first half was admittedly not the greatest, but once we got into the second half of this film, I was constantly in a state of, hold on now, are they actually cooking? And if you're gonna have either half of your film really work, probably a good idea for that to be the second half, right? Like, I think we'd much rather watch a film where the first half wasn't so great, but the movie sends you out on a high, as opposed to a film that starts great and then falls apart in the second half. You know what I mean? And so by the time the credits rolled, I was excited about seeing this character in the future again, and I felt like my 2 hours and $20 spent were not a waste of time. But anyways, guys, these are just my thoughts on Supergirl. Whatever you thought, let me know down in the comments. And as always, if you guys like this video and want to see another, just click somewhere on the screen to see what YouTube thinks you'd like. And hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next video.